Hello everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Venture Utah. Our first guest this week is Thomas Hybki with DomeTag. Thomas has been on the show before, but he has an exciting new venture that he is a part of that is going to be sharing with us, and it is pretty awesome, which is why we invited him back on. Certainly wasn't his personality. Oh, just kidding. No, it actually was. Thomas and I get along great. One of my favorite people. All right, so Thomas, thank you for being here.
Mr. Personality.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good to be here again.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Okay, so what is DomeTag?
DomeTag, it's basically, I can just use this, right?
Yeah.
Essentially put, it's a gel label. It's really no more complicated than that, but really what you can do with it is really exciting. A lot of it goes for like branding product. So somebody has this awesome product, can do this, do that, whatever, but they don't know necessarily how to make others know what that product actually is, and that's where a label comes in. Just kind of completes the product, makes people know what that actually is.
Sure.
And then this is just a great way of actually presenting that. So, medical devices, the back of cars, direct mail, promotional items, even sporting equipment. That's been a really big one now with COVID.
Okay.
Because everybody's working out at home.
Right.
So RVs, electronic devices, appliances, that sort of thing.
So gel-coated label, so is it like squishy?
It can be, yeah. It's not like, you can actually depress it. But the great thing about these labels is they're really outdoor rated. We actually did this really cool test, and we took a paper label, a plastic label, and then a dome tag, right? A domed label. And we poured sulfuric acid on it. Right, which is pretty dangerous. So we obviously we did it safely, but it's kind of a cool video because the paper label, and then we just used a Q-tip to rub it. Paper label, total disintegration. The plastic label started to like bubble and like morph, and like the ink started to smear everywhere. And then the dome tag, the dome label, just kept rubbing it. Absolutely no problem. Obviously, you don't want to immerse it in sulfuric acid.
Sure.
But it's great, for like on boats in like the Florida Keys where it's like bunch of sun, bunch of salt water. A lot of people are concerned about, longevity. I'm sure you've seen signs, and it's like the yellow goes and the red goes, and it looks like a weird sort of image.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really what it's used for. It's just a brand products.
And that makes sense because it would last. It makes sense that it would last longer because all that stuff is hitting the gel. It's not hitting the actual, coloration of the.
Yeah, and that gel actually acts as a buffer. There's specific like UV properties that kind of help diffuse the light, the UV light that hits the label helps to kind of diffuse that. But as you can see here, it looks great. There's a glossy new look. It's very tactile. So when you touch it, most people are like, yeah, I want to, like, it feels so cool. And it does feel really cool. It is remarkably durable. We actually have this other video where we went up to Park City, the owner did, and ran out on this road, laid down a label, and then ran back because there's this car that's coming like, 70 miles an hour, however fast they go up there. It's probably like 95 miles an hour. Joking. Wow. I'm joking. But just, run it over, and it's like, like the label's great.
Huh.
Like it's really cool.
That's awesome.
And then it's simple peel and stick. So, but yeah, let me just kind of blast through these slides. So,
sure.
Durability, waterproof, chemical resistant as we went over, and then great outdoor application. There's a lot of different shapes that you can do. It is a label. You have to make something that's kind of dome friendly, which is why some of these have extra curves in it, but really you can do whatever you really want. Cosmetics is another really big one.
Sure. Because
you get that glossy, like pristine look. And that's actually me. This is the largest dome tag that we've done. It was 8 feet wide.
Wow.
And that was another coworker at the time, 8 feet wide. So we literally domed the whole thing. It went on a giant crane. And then that's a really small one that we did, which is a Pokeball on a finger. So, I mean, that was like super, super tiny.
Oh, yeah.
Super tiny. We don't actually recommend people do that size because it is a pain in the butt to do. This is our trademark adhesive. It's super thick. It's actually 8 times thicker than regular adhesive. And the reason for that is like, flat labels, they're good. They just kind of slap whatever adhesive to make it not fall. But when you add a dome to it, like that gel coating, it actually adds a tremendous amount of weight. So if you use like a standard adhesive, it's like, why are my labels falling off? And it's like, well, dude, your adhesive sucks. I don't know if I can say that or not, but yeah. But that's why we developed Elephant Snot. Not only is it a ridiculously catchy name, we have people calling us, "Are you the elephant people?" like, yeah, we're the Elephant Snot people. But it works great,
Okay.
Especially on boats, cars, ATVs, skidoos and stuff.
Yeah.
They work really well.
Okay.
Let me just kind of blast to this. Print quality is another big thing. We actually pride ourselves on our print quality.
Wow.
Anyway, most people aren't going to care about that, but when you have a label side by side, there's this guy who's really going after me about pricing, because we're not the cheapest, but we have a great product. But he sent me labels that he wanted to match. And I was like, okay, cool. So I got the samples, like, dude, this is a horrible label. There's literally like lint and stuff inside of the gel coating.
Oh.
And then the label itself, the print was just horrendous. So he's like, he got back to me. He's like, dude, your pricing is like way more expensive than this other company. And I sent a picture. I'm like, dude, this is what you got from the other company. It's like, let me help you. Like, this is just, like, you want the cheaper price. This is what you're going to get. Like, look at this label that you sent me. So anyway, print quality is a big thing. We have a bunch of different surfaces that we can print on. There's a technical name, but this is just the different material that we print on. And you can create really cool effects with them. Like you can create really cool effects on them. These are some other little things. You really can't see too much, but different print surfaces. So we have the white, we have the bright silver, brushed silver, matte silver. The light reflective is really cool because it's kind of like a stop sign. And then holographic's just awesome.
Yeah.
We have variable data. So this is a local company that was building some stuff, and we can serialize numbers, put QR codes and whatnot.
Yeah.
This is a really great application. So this is an underwater camera for a customer of ours, and you can see there's the DomeTag. But it's just, it's underwater, salt water, constantly changing temperatures and whatnot. Works awesome. This is on a gift card. So not only do we do like brand names and stuff, we can also do different applications like this. This is kind of a cool, different use case for domes, kind of like an accent or an embellishment on a product.
So that's on the tires, right?
Yeah, just on a normal gift card. Some people probably are like, oh yeah, I remember those.
Okay.
And then more applications on a spa.
On a curved surface.
On a curved surface too, and headphones. And then, this one is something I just put together, direct mail.
Oh.
Which is really great because it actually works with the Postal Service. And direct mail right now with COVID-19 is huge. And then it actually goes on products. So these are some weird products. I just didn't have a lot of good pictures of products, so this is just something I threw together. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's really cool.
That's a lot of information, but I didn't want to spend a lot of time on the slideshow.
Yeah, no worries. That's good stuff. That's good stuff. Do you have like a minimum order quantity? Like when does it make sense?
For us, one.
One?
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep in mind, quantity is king with any industry. So when you order one, if you order 10, it's probably going to be like $5 more. When you order 50, it's probably going to be like $10 more. It's just, we don't order more. We normally say, order like a year supply because the labels normally last for about 2 years. So.
Okay, that makes sense. So because I'm imagining there's some significant setup cost compared to the per unit price.
Yeah, I mean internally, yeah. Whether you're running one or you're running 100 or you're running 1,000 or a million, like once you have everything kind of dialed in, you just kind of let the stuff go, and it's not, dramatically reduces the cost.
Gotcha. So what's the gel actually made of?
It's basically a polyurethane. It's a 2-part mixture, and there's technical terms that I can tell you those, but I won't just because it's confusing. But it's just a 2-part polyurethane that mixes. There's a chemical reaction. It heats up, and then it firms up once it goes on it. So
polyurethane. That's what you also use that to finish wood sometimes to seal and cover.
Yeah, it's a different type, but yeah.
Okay, that's really cool. So what's the outlook? What's coming next for DomeTag?
That's a great question. For us, we're aggressively going after like the packaging industry, the cosmetic industry, even different things like the HVAC world. Because in terms of the service tags, these work really good for that. in terms of cosmetics, it really makes a product stand out, and we can match a lot of those different colors. Like you'll see all of those like different skin tones where it's like just a shade different. We've been doing really well with that, but those are the main things. And then we have a lot of people that make medical equipment and sporting equipment. Those are really big right now because of everything that's going on. So
that's really cool. So your best customers, they're people with a physical product mostly?
Mostly, yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
Yeah, and then there's other people who have services that they kind of make that, it's like for service call, it's like, the HVAC, the plumber, the electrician, the garage door guy, even the gutter guy. We actually have a company that has a decal that goes on gutters.
Nice.
Yeah, so if you ever need service, it's like, who installed these, and they can go. And then there's different technologies that you can put in there, like NFC chips, near field communication. Not sure if you're
in the gel tag, in the DomeTag, I mean.
Yeah, I mean you put it behind it.
Behind it, okay.
But yeah, so like for service-based stuff, even for like restaurants, like welcome to Restaurant Co. Scan this NFC chip for the menu. You can also do it with QR codes. There's a lot of different ways, but
wow,
they're very sanitary. Clean them up. But what I like is I don't know how much time we got, but.
Go ahead.
What I like is when I first started, there was like a lot of people, not a lot, but there was several people who were like mom and pop shops. And I would ask them for their graphics and they would literally fax me over their letterhead. Coming from a graphics world, you can imagine how bad that is. Just low resolution, just looks horrible. So I taught myself Adobe Illustrator and Adobe Photoshop. And I actually make renderings for people. So I'll recreate their artwork, provided it's not too crazy. But I had this really like sweet old man, kind of like classical sales guy, working with this car company. And he literally mailed me a business card. He's like, we need to make a dome out of this, right? So I was like, oh my gosh. So completely recreated it. I can send it to you later if you're interested. Completely recreated it. Put the picture, I'm like, this is what you sent me. This is the artwork, and this is a rendering to make it look domed, right? But it was just services like that that other people might not be willing to do. I'm like, that's what excites me, is like helping people to like cool, now he can go and do his thing. But it's just a lot of fun too, so.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that was really insightful. That was really interesting to learn about that product. And honestly, that flew by. Unfortunately, we do have to wrap the segment.
Yeah, no worries.
But thank you so much for sharing. Really quick, for people who want to get in touch with you about DomeTag, about getting their own labels, what's the best way to do it?
Through the magic of post-production, my name and contact information are here.
Da-na-na-na. Oh. I love it. All right, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, for sure.
Alrighty, and our second guest today is our own Duncan Lutz. We will be talking about a new podcast project that we are working on called Deep Liberty. Duncan, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So yes, you're welcome. And what exactly is, we've talked a little bit about Deep Liberty, but what exactly is the podcast Deep Liberty?
So conceptually, the way we've talked about it, Deep Liberty is I don't want to say libertarian.
Maybe little L. Like
little L, yeah, little L libertarian podcast, where we kind of talk about kind of modern things that are going on, and sometimes we break down the kind of core of the libertarian belief system, which is liberty. So we get really deep.
And for example, I mean, one of the things that we have already talked about, and we'll probably do another podcast on at some point, is every decision that somebody makes affects the people around them.
Yes.
Every decision affects them in some way, and you could make the argument that it affects in some way their liberty or their property or possibly even their life. Mm-hmm. And so the classical liberal axioms of the sanctity of life, liberty, and property, you can do whatever you want as long as you're not harming someone's life, liberty, and property, you can take that, you can say that you believe that, and still have a very authoritarian view of what government should and should not be allowed to do. Mm-hmm. I mean, for example, what time you leave for work in the morning affects people around. It affects people on the road at the time that you leave and the time that you didn't leave. You know, if you had to choose between two different times, you're affecting both the people who are not going to be interacting with you on the road and the people who are going to be interacting with you on the road. Obviously, we don't want to, well, at least I think it's fairly obvious, we don't want to mandate when certain people leave for work from the government. We don't want a government mandate doing that. As certainly if we were to do that, it wouldn't be because of the way they were affecting other drivers on the road. So what is the line between that and stabbing somebody? Obviously, that's a violation. That is a clear violation. Everybody agrees that is a violation of somebody's life is to stab them and kill them. Okay, so what's the line between that extreme and this extreme? Where exactly do we draw the line between, okay, this is something that we're comfortable with a law being against, this is not okay, this is okay?
I guess so coming down to this discussion, like he's saying, so the question of essentially the libertarian philosophy is do whatever you want as long as you're not violating, it's called the NAP, it's the non-aggression principle. So basically, as long as you're not directly harming somebody, you're good to do your thing. So this is the question that we're trying to determine, is at what point are you actually harming somebody or affecting somebody enough that it violates the non-aggression principle. So your road example, I think, is really good and a much better example than in our previous discussion. Because, so say you leave work and your tire blows out and you pull over to the side of the road and you cause massive traffic. People just slow down really hard. That is, you could theoretically argue that you leaving at that time had that effect. However, you didn't intend to actually cause that traffic backup. Whereas if you leave at a specific time and then you get into an accident because you're not paying attention or something, then that you're actually directly harming somebody or affecting, and of course it's not as good of an example as it could be because maybe you're not directly trying to cause the accident. But I guess that my point is you can have effects on people, and the line at which you draw at which it is legally unacceptable to do is where we're trying to determine, and I think it's when you're actually harming somebody instead of inconveniencing them, or because I also find a lot of the arguments people make against the libertarian viewpoint is you inconvenience people.
Yeah.
You understand?
Oh yeah, and I think, so what I think complicates the issue, as I've tried to dive through this, is that there are multiple factors involved. So the differences between, and they become very obvious with the stabbing and the traffic example, right? So in the stabbing example, there's intent. You did that action specifically to stab that person, to kill that person. That was your intent. So the intent is there. That intent is not really there. You weren't thinking about the other drivers on the road when you decided when to leave for work in the morning. Nor would a reasonable person expect you to. That's so minimal. And the second factor is, so intent is one factor. Second factor is the intensity of the damage caused, or the intensity of the effect, the volume of the effect, or whatever you want to say. So obviously, ending one's life is probably pretty high up there. That's a huge, obvious, massive infringement on their right to life. Making somebody or cutting somebody off on the freeway so they have to tap the brakes, obviously that's much smaller. So that's another factor. I think the third factor is the distance that your decision is removed from the effect that you're measuring. So, you cut somebody off, they have to hit the brakes, that's a direct relationship. But if you cut somebody off, which causes them to hit the brakes, which causes the car behind them to swerve to the right, which causes them to cut another car off, at some point, the original cutter-offer loses accountability. It needs to lose accountability.
The actions of the individual at a certain point become primary.
Yes. And so I think those are the three factors I've determined so far to really we need to have a form of measurement. We need to have a standard of measurement and a metric for those three factors combined to kind of come up with something that is ideologically consistent and fair across the board. What do you think?
And I think in the end, at least in my thought process, in every situation there it ends up coming back to individual responsibility, like I said, being primary, but you do the determination, and that's what this podcast is for, is the determination of the reasoning why, because you can't necessarily be intellectually consistent if you don't fully understand your reasoning for doing something.
And that's, I think, right there, you just hit at it. The core idea behind Deep Liberty is to think critically and analyze our belief system to detect inconsistencies and remove them. And really not holding to anything just because we want to hold to it. And not really taking anything for granted either. I'd say it's a very deep, that's why it's called Deep Liberty. It's a very deep analysis and critique of our political views, our views on the world, and it's a process that really everybody should go through.
They should go through, and 95% of people don't go through. They just kind of live their life, and I'm a Democrat, or I'm a Republican, or I'm a libertarian. And when you're challenged, when your opinions and beliefs are challenged, you just kind of take a step back until that person leaves, and then you go right back to the way that you were before.
Yeah.
And that's what's led us to this point of contention in the United States, is people being the way that they are and refusing to change those belief systems. And we're trying to change that, Cameron.
And yes, and you know, that's how mass horrible things happen, is people going along with things. I mean, we look back 200 years at slavery, and slavery was allowed to go on for as long as it did, and racism persisted for so long after that because people were just going with the flow. They were not critically analyzing their belief systems. And there's so many people nowadays that are so fond of looking at that time through the lens of today, not realizing how many things they're going along with right now and they just take for granted, that people 50 years from now are going to condemn in exactly the same way that we're condemning racism now.
Exactly. Like, and I don't know, it's hard to gauge future progress because, I mean, in the past 9 years, or 10 years, what is considered progressive has changed. In the last 6 months, what's considered progressive has changed drastically. And I don't consider myself necessarily an anti-progressive person. I find that the progressive viewpoint tends to do exactly that. It tends to progress without any recognition that some things in the past may be okay to hold on to, and you can't change the past, to your point, people looking back and condemning individuals for racism when slavery was happening actively. You can't judge people through today's lens because, like I said, if you judge individuals from today's lens 10 years ago, like the Kevin Hart thing with the Oscars, or, you know, everybody is going to look terrible. Everybody.
Oh yeah, and I think there's a certain, and we're talking specifically about progressives right now, and this is not a problem that is unique to progressives, but it is a problem with progressives in general. Especially, and the more active they are, the more of an activist they are, the more they tend to have a very egocentric view of the world.
Yes.
And even if they're not willing to acknowledge it consciously, it's definitely there feeding their actions, which is an unconscious belief that they are inherently smarter, more enlightened, wiser, better, more moral, more ethical, something than everyone who has come before.
Yeah.
And they, rather than look at what is existing and figuring out why it's there, and then making a decision on whether it should be replaced.
Yeah.
They just see it. It doesn't make sense at face value. Oh, I'm smarter. I'm more enlightened than whoever did this. Here's a better way. And it's so it's so difficult to explain why it may not be a better idea when it seems on its face to be a better idea, because you have to experiment. You have any idea how many great ideas I've had that are actually horrible as soon as I try to execute them? They seem like such a great idea, they seem like they should work, and then I try to do them and they completely fall flat.
Yeah. I mean, this is why we need to be able to exist conservatives and liberals within the same system. Because, so this, Jordan Peterson talks about, I forget what lecture it was in, but he talks about liberals and conservatives. And his example he uses is that conservatives run companies, liberals create them. So he said, if you want massive change in your company, liberal people who are more, or who tend to be more artistically oriented and creative, can come in and make big drastic changes that can be really beneficial. They can also fall flat, like you said, but they can be really beneficial. And then if you have something that's working, you should bring in conservatives and have them run it, because they will do the thing. And so, you know, liberals and conservatives existing within the same system is really vital, to a company, but, you know, on a larger scale, a nation or a society. And right now, because of the polarization that we're experiencing, that just isn't happening. It's two sides of, it's not even of the same coin. The coin's been cut in half.
Right.
And they're just kind of sat there yelling at each other.
It's true. There has to be. It's almost like the Chinese principle of yin yang, or yin and yang, where there's the complementary opposites.
Yeah.
So that is, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this segment. That was just a taste of the deep conversations that we will have on Deep Liberty. So if you want to learn more, if you want to stay updated on when our first episode of Deep Liberty is going to be released and all that, you can follow Venture Utah here on Facebook, or go to Facebook, follow Venture Utah, or you can also follow the Robin Hood Studios Facebook page. Announcements about Deep Liberty will be posted to both of those. Thank you so much for joining us here on Venture Utah this week. We'll catch you next week, same time.